Welcome to the longest river in Europe, the Volga. The river's source is high in the hills of the Valdai Plateau between Moscow and St. Petersburg. It flows through almost 3,700 kilometers of Russian countryside before emptying into the Caspian Sea. After an exciting day spent discovering the secrets of the Russian capital of Moscow, we'll cast off for a journey to the north. We're on a ship named after the great Russian writer Alexander Pushkin for a 7-day dream cruise to discover this fascinating country, so rich with culture and history. All along the Volga, we will have opportunities to explore traditional villages infused with Russia's cultural heritage. Finally, our adventure will lead us to the great city of St. Petersburg, also called the Venice of the North. This city, saturated with all the grandeur of Imperial Russia, will welcome us with its palaces and museums bursting with treasure. Arriving at Moscow's Domodedovo Airport, we take a bus that will bring us to the city center. We'll board our ship later this evening, but now we have all day to explore the attractions of the Russian capital. The wide boulevards of this metropolis are astounding, and the buildings on either side draw our eyes towards the heavens. In Smolenskaya Senaya Square, we see the grandiose Ministry of Foreign Affairs, a magnificent example of Stalinist Gothic architecture. Characterized by their imposing stature and formidable severity, there are 7 examples of this architectural style right here in Moscow, including the Lomonosov State University and the Hotel Ukrainia. Our first stop, right in downtown Moscow, is the center and the symbol of Russia, Krasnaya Ploshad, the Red Square. This immense plaza hosted military parades that would awe the entire planet with the sheer power of the Russian army. It is an historic spot where czars were crowned, where the Soviet revolutionaries took power, and where many official ceremonies still take place. The Red Square is bordered by the Kremlin, St. Basil's Cathedral, the State Historical Museum, and the Gum department store. In front of the red brick wall of the Kremlin, tourists visit Lenin's mausoleum, which has been here on display since 1924. We start our tour of the Red Square with a visit to St. Basil's Cathedral. Built in the 16th century during the reign of Ivan the Terrible, this architectural marvel has become the symbol of Russia. Legend has it that the Tsar put out the eyes of the cathedral's architect so that he would never again create such a masterpiece. The onion-domed spires are typical of Russian religious architecture. Painted in bright colors, they look like enormous candies. But they also offer an extremely practical solution to Russian winters. The snow slides right off of these spiral domes. Let's head for the Kremlin, which is a Russian word meaning fortress. There are many buildings within its walls, including palaces, churches, and cathedrals. In the past, it was the official residence of the Tsars, and then of the subsequent Soviet rulers. But today, the Kremlin is the political center of the Russian Federation. Although some of the buildings are not accessible, the most interesting ones are open to the public. Passing by the State Kremlin Palace, which was built in the 1960s, we come to Cathedral Square. 3 cathedrals, 3 churches, 2 palaces, and a bell tower. These are the most magnificent buildings within the Kremlin walls. As a major element of Russia's cultural heritage, the Kremlin was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1990. The 15th century Italian architects designed it in a style that combined traditional Russian influences with the new techniques of the Italian Renaissance. For connoisseurs of religious art, a visit to these churches and cathedrals will be an unforgettable experience. The icons that adorn the interior of these sacred buildings are truly magnificent. At the base of the Ivan the Great bell tower, we find the largest bell in the world, weighing 200 tons. It was made in 1737 and was still in its casting pit when a fire broke out in the Kremlin. The cold water used to extinguish the fire ended up cracking the bronze, and a small piece weighing a mere 11 tons cracked off. Directly across from the Kremlin, GUM is the best-known department store in Moscow. GUM is an abbreviation for Государственный универсальный магазин, or State Department Store. This immense department store, built at the end of the 19th century, was nationalized after the revolution. When the Soviet Union fell, GUM adapted quickly, fast becoming one of the most dynamic commercial centers in Moscow. Inside are almost 1,000 stores and restaurants on multiple levels, and is an ideal spot to stop for a coffee and pastry. We leave the Red Square and head toward the Cathedral of Christ the Savior on the banks of the Moskova. Originally built in the 19th century, the cathedral was destroyed in 1931 on Stalin's orders. This building is a reproduction that dates from the 90s, and its existence is proof of a desire to preserve Russia's architectural heritage and of a resurgence of the Russian Orthodox faith. Moscow is a city of incredible cultural and historical richness. We would need to spend several days here just to visit all of its museums. The Tretyakov Gallery is the perfect place to discover the great Russian masters. Founded in 1856 by a rich textiles merchant, the gallery houses the largest collection of Russian art in the world. Here we can admire masterpieces by artists little known outside Russian borders. Just a few steps from the gallery, the Luskov Bridge gives us a reason to smile. The bridge is lined with metal trees onto which are fastened thousands of locks. This is a romantic tradition for newlyweds who come here with locks to symbolize their love, throwing the keys into the fast-flowing waters of the Moskova. And for devoted travelers who arrive with no locks, there are lock sellers that will let you share in this whimsical tradition. From the bridge, we have a fabulous view of the enormous statue of Peter the Great in the middle of the Moskova River. He is shown with map in hand aboard a great bronze ship that symbolizes Russia. Let's head for Ulitsa Arbat, a popular pedestrian street lined with shops, restaurants, and terraces. It's the heart of the Arbat district, historical home to the city's artists and writers. This is where we'll find the former home of Alexander Pushkin, the great writer who shares a name with the ship we'll soon be boarding. No visit to Moscow is complete without a trip on the city's famous metro. The metro feels like an underground palace and is completely unlike anything else in the world. Built out of marble and granite and decorated with chandeliers, sculptures, and mosaics, it is a public transport system with a totally unique aesthetic. Construction of the metro started in 1931, and Stalin decided that the entire Soviet Union would contribute. Workers were recruited from all over the Soviet states, along with the participation of the Red Army and thousands of members of the Komsomol, or Young Communist League. The Komsomolskaya station is named in honor of these young workers. Decoration was entrusted to the greatest artists of the era, who created works for the metro that celebrated the revolution, the proletariat, and the great accomplishments of Soviet Russia. The Moscow Metro has grown considerably since its inauguration in 1935. It now includes 182 stations and provides transportation for 10 million people every day. When we come up to ground level, night has settled over the Russian capital. The atmosphere has changed dramatically, and we savor these magical moments as we head for the MS Pushkin. We're docked in Moscow, on board the Pushkin, and we'll be off in no time on a cruise of the Volga. After a day spent exploring the Russian capital, we're glad to relax in the luxurious cabins. Spacious, comfortable, and well lit, the cabins are air-conditioned and furnished with large beds and HD TVs, as well as an office corner where guests can hook up their laptops or electronic devices. The small salon area is large enough to entertain a few friends, or just to sit and relax. The bathroom is equipped with a shower, toilet, and sink. While the crew is on the upper deck preparing to cast off, we settle in for the traditional welcome ceremony. This is our chance to meet the team that will guide us through this adventure. A first warm and friendly encounter with the captain, the onboard staff, and the musicians. Moscow is situated on the banks of the Volga River. We must first travel just over 100 kilometers through the Moscow Canal before reaching the Volga, close to the town of Dubna. And here we are, navigating the waters of the Volga. A church tower rises up dramatically out of the waters of the longest river in Europe. It's the bell tower of the monastery of St. Nicholas. In the 1930s, the Soviet Union started work on a series of projects meant to modernize the country. Hundreds of villages were struck off the map, and thousands of people were relocated during the construction of the Uglich hydroelectric dam. When the dam was built, the town of Kalyazin was flooded, but the bell tower remains, still standing over 70 meters above the waterline. Its foundation has been reinforced to withstand the erosive power of the river. We are approaching the town of Uglich in Russia's Golden Ring, a group of princely cities and towns northeast of Moscow that are considered some of Russia's most beautiful. As we disembark, we can see the two churches of the Uglich Kremlin, the Transfiguration Cathedral, and the Church of St. Demetrios on the Blood. On the riverbank, we have the good fortune to hear some traditional Russian music. After this warm welcome, we head over to hear a choir performing a great classic, the Song of the Volga Boatman. With our heads and hearts full of powerful melodies, we head for the Church of St. Demetrios on the Blood. With such a curious name, there's got to be a story behind it. In 1591, Prince Dmitri, the 10-year-old son of Ivan the Terrible, had his throat slit in Uglich in a bloody assassination. This church was built in his honor, its walls painted red in allusion to the blood that was spilled on that spot. As we gaze at the magnificent iconostasis that adorns the church's interior, our guide tells us the story that preceded a long period of violence in Russia's history. Let's head for the Transfiguration Cathedral with its 6 onion-shaped domes. It's a more recent construction, dating from the 18th century. Along with its traditional icons, the interior hosts a series of paintings strongly influenced by the Italian Renaissance. During our stop in Uglich, we'll get a taste of small-town life in the Russian countryside. After Moscow's lightning pace, we appreciate the calm streets. We'll stop at a local shop to pick up some souvenirs and especially to stock up on vodka. Here, we'll find many brands and flavors of the national drink. This is our chance to sample a few varieties that are not available anywhere else in the world. Back on board, we'll continue our journey north up the river. We can't resist sampling our purchases, and the birthday of a passenger is a perfect excuse. This is also a great time to get to know each other. We're aboard the Pushkin on a cruise up the longest river in Europe, the Volga. Departing from Moscow, our journey will take us up to St. Petersburg, with stops along the way in several of Russia's hidden gems. Nothing beats a good breakfast to start the day. On the menu, orange juice, yogurt, toast, cereal, fruit salad, French toast, and pastries. And for those of us who like a savory morning meal, there are boiled or scrambled eggs, potatoes, and a selection of meats. Traveling in Russia is not always easy considering the language barrier. The Cyrillic alphabet is not easy to decipher. That's why our cruise planners have organized a short beginner course to Russian. A lovely teacher gives us a short introduction to the language. By the end of the lesson, we've already mastered a few key phrases. We're rewarded for our efforts with a real diploma, which is, however, only valid on our ship. Our next port of call is Goritzi, and our stop there will be particularly memorable. The village's main attraction is a monastery dating back to the 16th century. However, as it's being renovated at the moment, it is not open to the public. Instead, we have a chance to meet the villagers and get a taste of daily life on the shores of the Volga. Our first stop is the village school. This is our first contact with the Russian educational system. The 180 students enrolled here are taught by 20 teachers, a rather uncommon ratio in most of the world. Through an interpreter, a student tells us about the daily routine, recess, lunchtime, and the various subjects taught here. We then enter a classroom entirely dedicated to the memory of the Second World War. There's one in every Russian school to honor the millions of people who died during this dark period. We then take the time to stroll through the village streets and discover a whole different world, with simple houses decorated in eye-catching colors. We can't help but take out our cameras. It is obvious that money doesn't grow on Goritzy's trees. The village we see here illustrates the harsh economic reality of today's Russia. While some Russians have made money off the fall of the Soviet Union and the opening of the country's market economy, the large majority gets by on the bare minimum. And yet, the villagers are friendly and welcoming. One woman invites us into her home, regaling us with stories about her family and her neighbors. We immediately succumb to the charm of her straightforward manner and her simple but comfortable home. We are now outside the Goritzi monastery. Our guide explains the political context of the 16th century when it was built. As we can't go inside, we decide to do a little shopping instead. There are small markets like these around most Russian attractions, and we don't hesitate to take a good look around. It's difficult to resist these imposing hats that bear the insignia of a Red Army official. Also on offer are a wide selection of clothing, furs, icons, and of course, the classic Russian dolls. We're back on board after a pleasant stop in Goritzi, heading north once more toward the small island of Kizhi on Lake Onega. This is a good time to partake in the culinary delights prepared by the talented team of chefs on board with us. The appetizer is a mixed salad of prawns, apples, tomatoes, and olives. This is followed by a choice between spaghetti with vegetables, herbs, and parmesan, or a chicken breast with rice, lemon, and cream sauce. The light German wine is a perfect match for the dishes. And for dessert, the crew has a little surprise for passengers celebrating a birthday. After supper, we place our bets. The conference room has been turned into a casino, named for the occasion, the fabulous Pushkin. Members of the onboard staff transform into croupiers, greeting us from behind blackjack tables and roulette wheels. Although the money we're gambling with isn't real, we are quickly drawn into the game. A night at the casino is a perfect end to a full day. And we're already looking forward to the next port of call. During the long journey from the Valdai Hills to the Caspian Sea, the Volga runs through many large lakes, including Lake Onega, a body of water so vast it feels like we're at sea. Because we're surrounded by water and there's not much to see, the onboard staff has organized various activities to entertain the passengers. This morning, we have an art workshop where we'll paint a matryoshka, a traditional Russian doll. Pencils, brushes, and paints are all ready for us to unleash our creativity on this small wooden figure carved out of birch. The point of this exercise is not to reproduce an existing style, but rather to use traditional methods and ideas to create something new. We hesitate at first, but slowly gain confidence, and in the end, we are extremely satisfied with our result. Our dolls are perhaps not as beautiful as the traditional matryoshkas, but they have their own charm, and we're proud of them. And for once, we have a completely original souvenir of our trip that we made with our own hands. We're now on the sun deck, preparing to visit the ship's control cabin. The view from the wheelhouse is magnificent. We discover an impressive array of navigational instruments, and the captain takes the time to explain the function of each one: the sonar, the GPS, the rudder, and mechanical cranks. The instrument panel is not as complicated as that of an airplane, but on board a ship, we aren't completely reliant on electronic equipment. Trusty old paper maps and compasses are always there in case of a system failure. Lake Onega, dotted with over 1,400 islands, is one of the largest lakes in Europe. We are in Karelia, one of the numerous republics of the Russian Federation. At one point in time, there were many wooden churches in Karelia. And while not many are still standing today, the most impressive ones are situated on the small island of Kizhi, where we will stop in a few minutes. The Kizhi Pogost is an enclosed area on the island consisting of 2 churches and an octagonal bell tower. The buildings date from the early 1700s and were constructed to commemorate the victory of Peter the Great over the Swedish armies. Each structure is entirely made of pine logs. No nails or any other metal parts were used in their construction. It's an amazing accomplishment, especially when we take a closer look at the Church of the Transfiguration, with its 22 pointed domes. Legend has it that the carpenter who built it was so dazzled by his own work that he threw his axe into the lake and ended his career then and there. In addition to the Pogost, there are other wooden buildings on Kizhi dating from the same era. We discover a windmill, a chapel, and some wooden houses where we find weavers working on their looms. A carpenter gives us a demonstration of his talent with the axe, using the same technique as his ancestors. He moves with incredible precision, and the results are absolutely breathtaking. Back on board the ship, we are invited to a vodka tasting workshop, organized by a real specialist who will reveal all the secrets of the Russian national drink. It's important to know how to drink vodka correctly, an art that's part of the Russian lifestyle. There are a few things to remember when drinking vodka. First of all, it must be served as cold as possible so that it loses its bitterness. And secondly, vodka is not for sipping. You have to shoot it back. There are breathing techniques that allow Russians to drink great quantities of vodka without falling into an alcoholic coma. Before drinking, breathe air in through your nose and then exhale out of your mouth. This is the moment to pour the contents of your glass down your throat. Next, take a piece of bread and smell it. If you can smell the bread, it means that you're good for another glass. And to make the evening last into the night while avoiding any gastric incidents, it's recommended to chase each glass of vodka with a pickle and a piece of cucumber or tomato. We'll end this informative session with a little game. While traditional melodies fill the air, two people hand off a bottle, tapping their bodies in time to the music. The loser is the person with the bottle in hand when the music stops. The winner gets another glass of vodka. One way to participate in this type of evening without waking up the next morning with a headache is to get some fresh air up on deck from time to time. We admire the sunset, but we're already anticipating our next stop. We continue our Russian adventure on board the MS Pushkin, leaving the island of Kizhi and massive Lake Onega, and heading back south towards the last stage of our journey, St. Petersburg. We have left the waters of the Volga and are now navigating on the Svir River, which connects Lake Onega to Lake Lagoda. Our next port of call is Mandrogy, constructed to resemble a traditional 19th century village. Originally built in the 18th century, Mandrogy was completely destroyed during the Second World War. It was rebuilt in the 1990s after the fall of the Soviet Union, when Russia opened its doors to tourists. Since we're going back in time for the next few hours, our guide welcomes us by sabering open a bottle of champagne. Although the village is a reconstruction, it gives a very good idea of how life was in the Russian countryside during the 1800s. In the traditional wooden houses called izbas, artisans paint matryoshkas and silk scarves. Another attraction is the Vodka Museum, where we learn about, buy, and consume one of the country's main exports. Mandrogy has become a popular destination not only for foreign tourists, but for Russian tourists as well. In addition to the traditional village, there are organized salmon fishing trips and snowmobile tours through the Arctic steppe to observe the aurora borealis. After our visit to the village, it's time to indulge in some traditional Russian fare. Entering the Mandrogy tavern feels like going back in time. Around the large wooden tables, we start our celebration, with a glass of vodka, of course. The meal starts with zakuskis. These traditional Russian appetizers are made of cured meats and various pickled vegetables. The tavern heats up with a few traditional songs. After the zakuskis, we continue our meal with a bowl of borscht, a soup made of beets, cabbage, and meat. Another national dish is served immediately afterward, beef stroganoff. The festive mood increases in direct relationship to the amount of vodka consumed, and once again, the group is carried away in the moment. Before returning to our ship, we decide to go for a little stroll to help us digest our meal and to clear our heads of the vodka. We cross to the other side of the river on an ingenious mobile bridge system and delve into the forest. There we find a series of wooden sculptures. Each one is a character from a fairy tale written by Alexander Pushkin. We begin to realize how great an impact the author had on Russia's cultural history. Back on board, we end up in the pub, one of the most popular spots on the ship. Our days are generally filled with activity, so it's nice to separate into small groups, sharing our impressions over a beer or cocktail. As we'll arrive in St. Petersburg tomorrow morning, tonight is the captain's dinner. We are welcomed into the restaurant by the entire crew of impeccably dressed on-board staff. The captain makes an appearance to give us his best wishes for the end of the journey and to thank us for coming aboard. We're in high spirits tonight. After dessert, we meet in the conference room for our own talent show. We have been practicing for this individually and in groups over the course of the week, and now's the time to show off our hard work. Some passengers have put together a choir with a repertoire of traditional Russian songs. Others recite poems, and a few have put together some short skits. Costumes, songs, and dancing come together to make this evening a perfect success. Tomorrow, we'll disembark in St. Petersburg, where we'll discover the delights of Venice of the North. Our ship is now navigating the waters of the Neva River, which flows from Lake Lagoda into the Baltic Sea and the Gulf of Finland. At long last, we arrive at St. Petersburg. Spectacularly sumptuous palaces, exalted churches, parks, fountains, and wide boulevards. Venice of the North is waiting to reveal the magic of its history and culture, brought to life in its towering buildings and bustling streets. This is a young city with a fascinating history. St. Petersburg was founded in 1703 by Peter the Great on a swampy piece of land with only one redeeming feature: its proximity to the Baltic Sea. Built in horrendous conditions by prisoners and forced laborers, it became one of the most beautiful cities of 18th century Europe. Peter the Great made it the capital of the Russian Empire in 1712, to the great displeasure of the elites and aristocracy in Moscow, who were then obliged to move. It's no accident that the city has been called Venice of the North, as its design, which gives pride of place to the Neva River, was strongly influenced by the Italian city. St. Petersburg is also reminiscent of Amsterdam, a fact that is unsurprising when we learn that the extensive canal system was modeled on that of the Dutch city. Before heading into the city center, we'll stop at a fortress on an island in the Neva. The first building ever constructed in St. Petersburg, the fortress has a sinister reputation due to its prison, where thousands of the Imperial regime's opponents were held. Peter the Great even imprisoned and executed his own son, the Tsarevich Alexei. The Peter and Paul Cathedral stands in the middle of the fortress. Peter the Great was immensely attracted to Western European architecture and wanted to turn his back on traditional Russian styles of construction. The cathedral was therefore built with great elegance in the Baroque style. The interior is awe-inspiring, adorned with marble and gold. The cathedral houses the remains of the Romanovs, the imperial family of Russia. The tomb of Peter the Great, made from Carrara marble, is situated right next to that of Catherine the Great and other members of his family. As we leave the fortress, we find pleasure seekers tanning on the banks of the Neva. We are tempted to join them, but the Hermitage is waiting to reveal its trove of treasures. Entering the immense palace square next to the Hermitage Museum, our first sight is the Alexander Column. 47 meters high and weighing 600 tons, the column was built to commemorate the victory of Alexander I over Napoleon's armies. Ironically, it's taller and heavier than the column in Paris's Place Vendôme, built by Napoleon to celebrate his victory at the Battle of Austerlitz. The first thing that comes to mind when thinking of St. Petersburg is its famous Hermitage Museum, a series of 5 buildings, including the Winter Palace, former residence of the Russian Tsars. The buildings are of incomparable richness, housing one of the greatest art collections in the world. Established by Catherine the Great, the museum includes works by the great Russian and European masters. The collection consists of millions of works of art, only a fraction of which are on display at any one time. From Oriental antiquity to Italian Renaissance, from Leonardo da Vinci to Picasso, the quality and value of the art exhibited here is simply astounding. Leaving the Hermitage Museum and vowing to return someday, we head towards another of St. Petersburg's architectural marvels, the Church of Our Savior on Spilled Blood. In 1881, Tsar Alexander II was assassinated. His successor, Alexander III, had a church built on the site where his father was murdered. With its colored domes, it's the only example of medieval Russian architecture in St. Petersburg, and is completely unique among the rest of the city's buildings, which are predominantly Baroque in style. Tomorrow will be the last day of our Russian adventure. We have other palaces to visit. We've just spent our last night on board the ship, which is docked in St. Petersburg. This morning, we'll head to the ship's boutique. For those of us who haven't stocked up on souvenirs at the ports of call, this is the place to make up for lost time. A wide variety of Russian objects are on display, and there's bound to be something here that will make our friends and family back home smile. In the windows, we see matryoshkas of all sizes and colors, mother of pearl and enamel jewelry, lacquer boxes, and Fabergé eggs. As we get ready to leave MS Pushkin, all the photos taken by the ship's official photographer over the course of the week are posted. Some are really excellent, and the choice is not easy. Many are group photos to help us remember all the friends that we've met during our Russian adventure. Our shopping done, we climb onto a bus and head 25 kilometers south to the small town of Tsarskoye Selo, also known as Pushkin, where we will visit the Catherine Palace. With a blue facade more than 300 meters in length, the Catherine Palace is quite simply one of the loveliest palaces in the world. Originally commissioned by Catherine I in 1717, it was later remodeled by her daughter, the Empress Elizabeth, to whom the palace owes its breathtaking splendor. Until the October Revolution in 1917, it was the summer residence of the Imperial family. Inside, we put on protective shoe coverings to protect the palace floors. The grand staircase brings us up to an immense ballroom, where the sun is reflected in thousands of mirrors and gilded sculptures. The palace is furnished with indescribable richness, and we can easily imagine the splendor of the balls that were held in the time of the Russian Tsars. The entire palace is filled with treasure, but most impressive is the Amber Room, where even the walls are made out of amber and gold. The Amber Room was looted by the Nazis during the Second World War. What we see today is a reconstruction based on pictures of the original. It's impossible to visit the palace without walking through the manicured grounds on which it stands. The gardens are meticulously maintained, decorated with neoclassical statues and Renaissance-style pavilions. We leave Tsarskoye Selo and head for Peterhof Palace on the shore of the Baltic Sea. After a journey to France, Emperor Peter the Great decided to build a palace that was every bit as magnificent as Versailles. Work on the building began in 1714, and the palace was inaugurated in 1723, record speed for a building of this size. The impressive grounds of Peterhof Palace, composed of 3 distinct parks, rival those of Versailles for sheer grandeur. While the gardens contain a large number of fountains, the most majestic is the Grand Cascade, directly below the palace entrance, an area that comes alive with dozens of gilded sculptures. The Peterhof Palace is the last stop on this remarkable cruise of the rivers of Russia. This journey has brought us into contact with the rich history of this country, and we're already planning our return in search of new horizons.